McKenzie County, and welcome to the Living in McKenzie County Podcast. We are on episode 14, and we are filming today. It is April 24th. It is a beautiful day out in Watford City, and this episode will be dropping on May 6th. We're super excited to get into our topic and to our guests we have with us today. But before we start with self-introductions, I am going to just give a real quick shout out to our program producer, Mr. Brock White. We were recently notified that Brock is the award winner of North Dakota Tourism's 2025 Amplifier Award. And so, Brock, I know your goal is to be a fly on the wall, but do you want to shout out to anybody, anything particular before we get started?
Thank you to everyone from the city that's had my back. That's all I got to say.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Brock. We're very proud and excited for you, the opportunity to recognize you and your work. So with that, we're going to get started. Many of you listeners out there may not know, but many of you may be small business owners. May is Small Business Month. And so we have with us today a team of folks that support small businesses and help small businesses both start up and also expand. And so what we're going to do is we're going to move around the table to my right, and we're looking for self-introductions today. So let's start with Mr. Keith Olson. But Keith, tell us a little bit about what you do and who you do it for.
I'm the regional director for the Small Business Development Center. I've had this job since 2003. Work for Williston State College. The program is largely through funds from the SBA down through to the states. Our program is hosted at UND, but our local host is Williston State College, and it's our goal to work with businesses to start, grow, and expand. We're a low-cost service. When low cost means free. They don't like us to say free too often, but we're here to help when they ask and interact with economic development agencies and banks and do the best we can for whoever needs help and whatever they need help with.
Excellent. Thank you, Keith. We'll certainly make a few laps around the table, and we might even crisscross from time to time, so we'll definitely get back to you. But thank you for the work you do. You are a wonderful partner to our office in community development and also to the many businesses that use your services. So thank you so much. And you are really good at what you do.
Well, I don't know about that. I'm still employed. I guess that's a good thing.
Okay, moving right along. Bobby, tell us a little bit about who you work for and what you do.
Thanks for having me. Bobby Kaloustian, work at Cornerstone Bank in Watford City. Been here about 9 years. I kind of joke around. I figured I don't really have an identity because I have to introduce myself as Sam Johnson's husband or Richard and Kathy's son-in-law. They're local people here that lived there their whole lives. Moved here in 2016, mostly deal with commercial and business banking for Cornerstone Bank. When I first started, did some consumer lending, but mostly been focused on small business loans. So
excellent. Thank you, Bobby. I think my husband feels your pain because he actually came back in 97 before I even got back, and everybody referred to him as Pete Hovitt, which he did not necessarily appreciate that. So, but it's good to make those connections. So The Johnson clan.
Right.
Love it. Awesome. Thank you so much for being here today. All right, Justin, let's learn a little bit more about you.
Thanks, Vanita. I'm Justin Voll. I work for First International Bank and Trust here in Watford City. I am the Watford City office president. I've been with the bank for 23 years and done a multitude of different tasks for the bank over the years. Right now, in addition to leading the local offices here in Watford City, continue to do lending, mostly to small business, ranchers, that we have here in our local economy. So been doing it for 23 years, find it very rewarding and enjoy what I do.
Excellent. Well, we might be able to even weave in a little bit of a history lesson because I think collectively at the table, there's quite a few years of experience here and quite a few years working in this local area. One of the first things we wanted to talk about, I think, is both maybe just a little bit historically, but then moving into the present and certainly what you see for the future. If the listeners are here working in the area, or they're maybe even not here in this area, what can you share with them about what our business climate is like here? And I'll take just a real quick cut in to say that, and Brock's going to edit this in beautifully, but we did have Don Morgan, Bank of North Dakota president and CEO. We grabbed an interview from him on Monday, and he shared a little bit about how Bank of North Dakota partners with Main Street lenders and also how they partner with communities on bonding and that kind of thing for infrastructure. So tell us just a little bit about how you see North Dakota and Western North Dakota's business climate.
I think that, the two that I covered divide McKenzie and Williams County, and 99% of our clients are in McKenzie and Williams County. And I would say of all the places you have do business in North Dakota, this is probably as good a supportive economic development infrastructure with the Rough Rider Fund and the Star Fund supporting businesses and providing local match for the flex-based loans, and just having one-stop shops in both communities really make it easy for a business owner to get help from all the different agencies at the same time. I think we speed the process up quite a bit. And then having good lending partners that support our program, but more importantly, make loans to all the clients that we work with.
And how about on the banking side of things? How at Cornerstone and how at First International do you kind of see the business climate? If you have somebody coming in from outside the area that hasn't done business here before, what can you kind of say to them is maybe our advantage or maybe even some of the potential concerns or risks that they might want to be aware of?
Well, I to kind of piggyback on some of what Keith said, I think that we have very strong advantages, and starting with the services that Keith offers for free, but partnering with the local banks and the two very strong local community banks with very long ties to Watford City, with the Stenjum family and the Swenson family being the founders for both First International Bank and Trust and what is now Cornerstone. I think that the employees have a sense of pride in Watford City and want to carry on the legacy of the founding fathers of those banks and do what they can to promote that and drive that business model going forward. I mean, we all know that small businesses and the agriculture industry is what is, Watford City is based on. And I think I can speak for Bobby too, but between FIBT and Cornerstone, we certainly try to do what we can to foster those relationships and help them grow.
I know I look back to COVID and when they started pushing out the PPP program, and honestly, 5 years past it, I don't even remember what it stood for, but it was really, I think, the infrastructure that was built out in the Western North Dakota communities and the state as a whole through the relationships that you talked about, the business and lending relationships that really helped North Dakota community banks get that money out into the places it needed to go to preserve and protect those small businesses. So definitely we've seen examples over and over again of how banking is more than just a business, it's a relationship. So Bobby, anything to add to?
Yeah, just to kind of look at it from a 30,000 foot view, it seems, from my perspective, I'm not originally from here, but it's almost very, I don't know if easy is the right word, but it's different in terms of starting a business here, right? Because I think, there's a lot of the large oil producers or the big employers here. It seems like there's a lot of like the service companies. There's a great opportunity to start a business, earn an income. And sometimes I think people, like what I've seen, they might not have the business experience to understand the things that they don't really know, right? Like a lot of these people are experienced in what they do. They can, if it's a construction worker, they know how to frame a house or pour concrete, but they might struggle on the business side. So I think, working with Keith here, if they're a startup, kind of understanding some of those administrative tasks, it definitely gives people a leg up, I'd say, to, if they're thinking of jumping into, being an entrepreneur, it can be daunting. So
I always think of that, and I asked my, at the time he was a freshman, he's a sophomore now, but I asked my son that one day. I said, do you think people who have entrepreneurial training, small business training, make better employees or not? And obviously the question was, an uphill question to him with his age and that kind of thing. But I think what people oftentimes don't realize is when they're working for a business, they see the daily tasks and they see the daily responsibilities. The small business owner gets to take all of that responsibility and then take it home at night and work the business side of it. So the opportunities here, though, I think are endless or unique to probably most places in the country.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. It almost seems like, we've talked about this a lot. One of the biggest needs here is housing. And it's going to be very difficult for, the groups in economic development to bring a experienced builder to build houses here. You almost need to essentially start a construction company rather than trying to entice someone to move their operations here type of thing. So just to talk about the opportunities, that's kind of one point that it almost seems like starting a business is better than bringing in a business type of thing. So
I think that happens a lot, or even building off of your existing businesses in an expansion mode. And maybe that's something to visit with a little bit about is the opportunities for expansion, not just startup, but where do you see expansion or diversification opportunities right now?
Well, I think to their points earlier, though, when we're working with entrepreneurs, it's always the caution tale is if you're the best mechanic and you start a business, it's too easy to get wrapped up in answering the phone and ordering parts, and all of a sudden there's nobody doing the mechanicking. So a lot of it is just getting the business owners to understand where their strengths are and where they should get help, or where. The one advantage of the way things have changed since COVID is the ability to get outsourced help or bookkeeping and legal and whatever the case is from a distance. So you don't have to, it's easier, it's more readily in some of those kinds of things. From the service side or the expansion side, like you said, there's a lot of good opportunity here. The challenge is finding those opportunities that aren't super duper expensive as far as buying property, putting up a building like Bobby alluded to on the housing. The same problem exists on anything commercial. We're lucky if we work on one commercial or commercial construction project here. It's usually rehab or buying an existing property, just because of the challenges to run your business at one point and then at the same time trying to make sure the general contractor is getting what he needs to get done so that you can move into that new space or expand or whatever. So there's great opportunities to expand, but there's also a lot of headaches that come with it, making sure that your core business doesn't suffer while you're trying to do that.
And maybe that's a little bit of a segue into, I think, a conversation that we have had from time to time, Keith. The city of Williston and the city of Watford City are probably the only two communities in North Dakota that treat their flex pay interest buy down as a grant versus a back end loan. And maybe we try to justify that from time to time because it's fairly unique. But talk a little bit about the Bakken premium.
Well, it's most of the construction projects that if they're in another part of the state and expanding out here, we're working on one project. It's a larger project in Williston, and they said to do the same thing in the other side of the state. We're about $1.5 million more expensive here. And the building they're buying is roughly the same price they would pay on the other side of the state. It's just a difference in sub costs, material costs, freight, however you add it up, that's about the difference. I mean, obviously they can charge a little bit higher rate, and I think they'll get full occupancy. It's not a hotel, but I mean full stabilization much quicker than they would in another part of the state. But trying to balance all that is challenging. The flex space here in Watford and Williston has been a grant to this point inside the city limits. Outside in the county, we've had to get a little more creative, and about the only other place that they will do grants is typically related to daycare, and then there's been some investments in housing from time to time in low income and that kind of thing. But for the most part, the local share is usually paid back.
And this might be a good time. I haven't really talked about the Rough Rider Fund programs yet, but it's a good time to probably talk about those. And I think over the last couple of years, the fund, which is oversaw by a committee appointed by the mayor, and then they provide recommendation to city council for approval of expenditures. But there's a handful of business retention and expansion programs, and they're small match forgivable loans over a period of time. And then we also provide the community match for the FlexPace interest buy down program. And I think both Cornerstone and First International in recent history have worked on FlexPace with Bank of North Dakota and with the Rough Rider to get that community match bought down. But I think that's an opportunity fairly unique to businesses in North Dakota, and definitely that grant piece of the interest buy down is very unique to our McKenzie County and Williams County, Watford City and Williston. And so I see it as an added advantage or an incentive to do business here instead of do business someplace else. On big FlexPace projects maxed out, I think that is just over $300,000 in interest buy down.
For regular flex, yeah, the local Williston and Watford are the same community share, so it's about 107 or 108,000 to get the full 200.
Yeah. So an opportunity definitely for access to affordable capital. Just for fun, in our office, we have a software program that helps us manage our business retention and expansion files of our businesses in Watford City. And so kind of maybe a little trivial. Let's have a game of trivia here. Does anybody want to take a venture or guess at how many businesses that we have in Watford City? And understand that's from the gamut of the one person making handmade goods in their home, if they've filed for a tax ID number, all the way up to the multi-million-dollar corporate companies that we have here and everything in between. Want to take a guess?
100.
Justin.
I was going to say 300.
1,000.
Oh, wow.
1,000 businesses. And I love the breakdown.
Is that in the city limits or is that McKenzie County?
No, it's the city limits.
Okay.
If we had gone countywide, that would be another 300. But of those, because it brings me into my next question, of those 1,000-ish businesses, 750 of them have between 1 and 10 employees. So it begs the discussion or the question, and we always do this with what's rural, what's urban. What is a small business? What does a small business mean? And I ask this as partners to small business owners. Like our ranch, I definitely view our lender as a partner to our business. So I'm just curious, how do you define small?
That's a good question. It's not really easily definable, and probably all three of us have a little bit different spin on our definition. But I look at it as local. I look at it as maybe a single owner or a smaller ownership group that all certainly have the same vision, and their base of operation is within, the same area as their headquarters. They're working within the Western North Dakota, Eastern Montana area. I guess it's, obviously not something that is probably going to be nationwide, but we have businesses that are based out of Canada that have operations down here in Watford City, and I would consider them a small business, I guess. So I'm, even as I'm talking here, I'm kind of contradicting myself. It's certainly ambiguous and depends on the way you want to look at it.
Well, I think that's what's interesting about the question. There are many, many, many definitions. And I think where it gets really interesting is when you talk about supporting your small businesses in your own communities. So from shopping local to local contractors to that kind of thing. So curious anybody else's thought on the definition of small business.
Well, I guess technically, like if you go back to our wonderful days of PPP when we were flooded with that, I think technically the SBA considers a small business 500 employees and below. Now, to me, I think a company with 500 employees is a pretty big company. And just to kind of go off of what Justin said, the small business, I tend to think in my mind, a small business, the owner's wearing multiple hats. They're not, siloed into a specific role. They have to kind of be adaptable and transform and be able to, oversee the company, but also get their hands dirty type of thing. So, but yeah, I guess technically a small business, I think, is under 500 employees.
Which, by the way, if we follow the SBA definition, we have 8 businesses in our community over 100 employees. So they take a very liberal approach to that definition, I would say. But Keith?
I don't know. I guess, honestly, I try not to think about it because if anybody comes in, we try to offer help. I don't know that I've ever worked at anything but a small business. The fun part is working with a company. I can think of 2 or 3 service companies I worked with that we started with them when they were adding their first 5 to 10 people, and now they're probably operating in 10 states with 400 employees, but they still headquarter in the basin. So to me, those are, I guess they would be the ones that are becoming bigger, but they still fit the size standard. So it's just like we are supposed to keep track of urban versus rural, and to me, we're all rural. You can get really stressed out trying to figure out what client fits in what silo, but the easiest thing is just to not worry about it and just help whoever walks in the door.
I always kind of think of, because we see this impact and we feel this impact because we have large corporations operating here clearly in the energy industry, but the businesses that deploy and contract capital on quarterly earnings reports and that kind of thing, that gets to be kind of an unstable situation for communities. So always appreciative of the independently owned and independently operated businesses that make up such a large percentage, to be exact, in the state of North Dakota. 99% of our business in North Dakota is classified as small business, so 1% not small business. And of those small businesses, there are 74,000 of them in the state, and they employ 56% of the workforce in North Dakota. So small businesses matter to Main Street. They matter to communities. Just real quickly, I don't know if we've necessarily tied this in together or firmly, but how do your local banks interface with Bank of North Dakota? We've talked a little bit about the FlexPace program, but do you end up using other programs with them, in partnership with them?
We sure do. And we are so lucky to have the Bank of North Dakota in our state. They are very responsive to what is happening. When we had the fires last fall, they rolled out a program right away to help those ranchers and farmers with their losses. They certainly have a pulse on what's going on, both in the agriculture side of things and then also on the small business side of things. And to be able to use them and their various products that they offer as such a great and easy lending partner, it it really, to your very first question, wondering about the climate, it just puts us a notch above as far as the ease of entry than pretty much any other state, I would have to think, between the strong economy that we have in Western North Dakota and the Bank of North Dakota programs that they offer that really makes it easier for smaller, locally owned community banks to do business. It's just a home run for the small business owner in the long run. They make it much easier than if we had to try to run everything through SBA. And no knock to SBA, but that's a big federal government program that is not as nimble as the Bank of North Dakota is, and not in tune with what our specific needs in the state of North Dakota is.
Yeah, just to kind of add to Justin's comments, I think Bank of North Dakota does a really good job of having their thumb on the need of the businesses within the state. I can't speak to everything that goes on outside of McKenzie County, but it seems like Bank of North Dakota does a really good job of understanding the needs. And I think that's one of the biggest things, when you sit across the table from a business owner, the first thing you need to understand is, what are their pain points? How can we help? And leveraging those different programs that Bank of North Dakota offers is, just like Justin said, it makes your job as a banker easier to help the client that you're working with.
Keith, anything to add?
No, just that I think we're really fortunate that all the banks in our region are willing to use any of the Bank of North Dakota programs that help and benefit the clients. And then they're super responsive. I mean, it's a lot easier if there's an issue. You can call Bismarck, or they can get somebody out here if there's a problem. Or their personnel are pretty active in what's going on. I think you see how quick they are rolling out some farm assistance programs now. They probably have the ability to react faster than any federal agency ever would.
And by the way, we're really glad that you buffer us from from the federal programs. You're just too cool.
We don't, honestly, the SBA the programs they have that we utilize are great. 504 we utilize fairly consistently. It's just with the Bank of North Dakota as a backstop, it really eliminates the need a lot of times for doing a guaranteed loan. It's just much better to partner with BND, share the loan, and share the risk.
And so let's start off with you doing a self-introduction for us, please.
Yeah, Don Morgan, President and CEO of the Bank of North Dakota. I took over for Todd Steinwan, the prior CEO, back in August of last year. I have spent about the last 25 years in community banking, the vast majority of that in North Dakota community banking. Worked for Starian Bank for many years, worked for BNC, National Bank for many years, and then also worked down in Dallas-Fort Worth for about 5 years for community banks, just Texas community banks. So I bring that experience to the bank, having worked with the Bank of North Dakota, as all banks and credit unions do, on agricultural deals, business deals, all the various programs. And so when the opportunity came up to run the Bank of North Dakota, I just couldn't pass it up. And it's been 8 months. It feels great. Loving every minute of it. Getting through my first legislative session. That has been interesting, but good overall.
Excellent. Well, just as kind of a reference trivial piece, I think, Don, you were a week or two on the job when you came out and joined us for Main Street Summit back in August. So I think we got to stake claim to your first public interview. So thank you for that as your chair of the Bank of North Dakota.
That was a lot of fun.
Good. Well, thank you so much for taking the trip out. We really enjoyed having you here and hosting you here. Can you real quickly, let's do one more trivia question before we hop into history. How many state-owned banks are there in the United States?
One.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Great answer to a great trick question. So North Dakota boasts the only state-owned bank in the United States. Can you tell us a little bit of the history of Bank of North Dakota, how it came to be? And then we'll transition into your position today in the market.
Yeah, it's a fascinating history. Started 106 years ago. It really started with a bunch of angry farmers. Really, the farmers back then, which was the primary industry in the state of North Dakota, and is still huge today, they were getting not treated very well out of the rail shipping rates they were getting, the interest rates, the ability to convert monetary transactions. And so they formed a political party and gained power at the state level and formed the only state-owned bank and the only state-owned mill and elevator, which is up in Grand Forks. And the two have survived up till today. They founded it on the principle that we're supposed to promote North Dakota agriculture, commerce, and industry at all costs. And we've done that for 106 years. We are very unique in that state ownership. You can think of it as every state citizen, you and I and all the citizens, we own the Bank of North Dakota. The tax dollars come in. That is our deposit base. We don't take it anywhere. We just use that as a deposit base. And that allows us to engage in that banking leverage to put loans and capital back out into the state via the community banks or via a lot of the special programs. I'm sure a lot of the small business ones we'll talk about today. And then we generate a profit for the state. We are a for-profit business like the mill, the only two owned by the state at that level. And we deliver all around, we're about 10 billion in assets, and we deliver, call it around 350 to 400 million per year back to the state's coffers in forms of profit. So that's who we are. And that's kind of our brief history. We actually have a nice book here. If anybody comes to the branch, you can pick up a book or go onto our website and read all about it.
Excellent. I love hearing that story. I love the fact that, we look back to the NPL forming these cooperative models and really pushing North Dakota core values and the fundamental needs that they had to conduct sustainable business in North Dakota. And the fact that it's still living on today, and it's such, both the mill and the bank are such an asset to our state. When I broke my notes down on what we wanted to cover today, I kind of sorted it off, and I don't even know that I know exactly I'm accurate in my analysis of this, but I kind of see your clients in two arenas, maybe even three, because I'm proud to say that I was able to attend North Dakota State University and I paid my BND student loans off over a period of 10 years. And that probably wouldn't have been achievable for my family if it wasn't for that opportunity. So you probably still have that portfolio, but can you talk a little bit about how the Bank of North Dakota helps local communities, local cities, local counties with the variety of bonds that you offer, that kind of thing? What has been the value that BND brings to local communities before we hop into the business side of it?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say I would encapsulate it as public-private partnership. If you look at our best programs, clean, sustainable energy out in communities, you look at our PACE program, that's that partnership between the state bank, a local entity, might be an economic development entity at the local level or local government, and then some private party, be it a business or an individual or whatnot. Those programs seem to work best with that combination of those. And then, of course, in addition to that, we have our legislatively directed programs that are, the legislators are representative of the citizens and they represent them, they form the laws. They will direct us to provide some programs. For example, the school construction revolving loan fund. We offer loans to school districts, municipalities at a 2% interest rate. And that's really a way to save on the cost of the school, cost of the financing. We save them on bonding fees. And we also, it's kind of an indirect form of property tax relief. That's just one of, I believe we have 54 different legislatively directed programs, everything from school construction to subsurface infrastructure construction, think water, sewer, electrical, propane storage, water infrastructure, the list goes on and on and on. But those are really the ways that we partner with local municipalities and provide some offerings there as a way to help North Dakota.
Excellent. Well, I think the city of Watford City can attest to the fact that we're glad that BND exists. You partner in most of our municipal bonds that we hold. And again, those interest rates really make it, you referenced it as property tax buy down, but essentially it allows rates to be bought down on those enterprises as well. So really a wonderful partnership between communities and BND that oftentimes I don't think people understand how it works, but we appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Okay, so like we talked about earlier, May is Small Business Month, celebrating small business. Can you talk about how BND works with Main Street business bankers to support small business in North Dakota?
Yeah, that's the core of our business. So again, that public-private partnership, we're $10 billion in assets. Out of that, about $7 billion is in loans, and out of that, about $6 billion is in the core, what I call the core banking portfolio, which means those are deals where your local community banker, and it could be with any of the community banks or credit unions out in your area, are your direct relationship manager, whether you're a farm and ranch, whether you're a business, whether you're an individual, whether you're a startup business all the way to a mature business. That banker will work with you directly on your financing needs for your whatever you have going on. Then if it's a fit, if there's something about the deal, maybe it's too large for that bank to do on its own, they'll ask us to come in. Or let's say a startup and they don't want to take on all the risks themselves as a bank. We have the beginner entrepreneur loan program. Through all the stages of a business cycle, from startup to the venture capital phase, to the high growth phase, to the mature phase, we have our core banking that we'll partner with. And then we also have some of these ancillary programs that can help shore up some of those needs or those areas where the community bank or credit union may just not want to step into on their own. They want to partner like the Bank of North Dakota to step in there with them. That's the core of our business. That's the bulk of what we do.
I know you referenced a couple programs. One of them that we end up using frequently here in Watford City through our Rough Rider Fund, our 1.5 cent city sales tax, committed to economic development, is our FlexPace program. Do you want to talk at all in detail about that program? That's, like I said, one of our favorite locally, but do you want to talk about it from a BND side at all?
Yeah, from the BND side, that's probably our most highly used program. And that's really in that established kind of mature phase of business. If they're looking to expand, especially if they're looking to add jobs, things like that, FlexPace, we actually carve out a portion of our earnings that we dividend back to the state, and we set those aside for FlexPace so that we can buy down that interest rate depending on things like how many employees are you adding, what's the expansion look like, lots of different factors, but it can buy down that rate significantly. We've seen, today market rates are around 6.5%, 7.5%, and the buy down can get some deals all the way down to 2.5%, 3.5%. So it's a really, really powerful, and it can really be beneficial to a business. That type of interest rate savings, you mentioned it on school construction. It's on infrastructure construction, it's on business, it's on startups, it's through FlexPace. The interest rate buy down really, really helps when it's needed.
Excellent. Yeah, we really appreciate, well, I think consumers in general appreciate low interest rates. And we afford that opportunity through the Bank of North Dakota on so many fronts. So thank you for that. And thank you for that explanation of that interest buy down aspect of FlexPace. This is maybe kind of a question of visionary looking into the future, but we certainly can look at all the ways that BND has supported both communities and Main Street businesses. And of course, you've always had your mission in agriculture and production agriculture. When people think about what the future looks like in North Dakota, where do you see BND driving North Dakota forward into the future?
I think we're going to be right at the heart of it, kind of like we've been in prior decades here. If you look ahead 20 years from North Dakota, the opportunities are tremendous. You look at, energy, agriculture, technology are kind of our big three. And each one of those areas is evolving tremendously. And we're sitting on tremendous wealth and a tremendously good strategic position as a state. If you look at our energy plate, how much natural gas we produce, that's actually becoming a limiting factor on our Bakken oil play. if we're able to move and use that gas, and we're also happen to be able to get things like enhanced oil recovery, other things in place there, the potential for that is huge. So that technological advancement in energy is critical for the future of our state. And we're running the Clean Sustainable Energy Program here at the bank, which is investing in research and development in that space. We're also engaged in the West East Pipeline Conference, those things like that at a state level, trying to answer these issues and convert them all into opportunities. If you look at agriculture and the future of that, I mean, it is evolving from a technology standpoint so fast. Also, with a soil health, the knowledge of soil health is growing very, very quickly, and with new and profound insights coming out of our university systems. And then also this regenerative aspect, this kind of getting back to old principles, or making sure not to lose some old principles of management that kind of coalesce. But ag has a very wonderful future. And then, of course, technology. It's affecting energy, it's affecting ag. But specifically for North Dakota, because of our climate, our business-friendly environment, our water, our energy, data centers are really, really interested in coming to the state of North Dakota. We've had some already, some big projects, but there's many, many more. And I would say that we're perfectly positioned in that space as well. So we're a part of all of that today as the bank, and I imagine we'll be a part of all of it, in addition to continuing to provide our staples like our core banking, like our student loans, like our financial literacy, all the other things that we do. So we'll be right at the heart of it, which for me is one of the most exciting things about coming on board here as her leader.
So, Don, this is maybe just a little bit of an add-on, and I apologize, but I also think that it's worth noting. We've bumped into each other in a couple hearing rooms on different bills. Where do you see BND? Well, where's BND today in housing, and where do you see BND moving forward in helping solve North Dakota's housing shortage?
You know, it's very timely with Governor Armstrong. Well, Governor Burgum had come up with his plan to help with workforce housing. Mm-hmm. Governor Armstrong came in, kind of pared it down, and I think pointed it in certain different spear tip directions. We've been a part of that conversation all along the way through both administrations. What's exciting now is Governor Armstrong has, and it's moving through the legislature, is pushing through his home program, which is that tri-party relationship between state, local, and a private developer to get subdivisions built in rural communities that are having an economic event like Ellendale, North Dakota with Applied Digital, or up in Grafton with Marvin Windows, or many other areas in the state, to provide that baseline infrastructure to build houses on. Then we've got the RWISH program, which is a pilot that is in Ellendale and now in Grafton. That is, again, that partnership where not only do we provide some of the financing as a bank, but the RWISH program that we run also comes in and partners with a company like Applied Digital to do portions of the equity required for a multifamily build out or a build out of several residential homes like you see going up in Ellendale right now. They're going up. And then there's always this in rural areas, there's been this hiccup in the secondary market on not wanting to buy rural residential home loans, which precludes those buyers from entering that 30-year fixed rate market that everybody talks about. And it's because there's been an appraisal problem there. They either have too far away at comps or there's some appraisal problem. And this really tightened up after 08 and 09 when the Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac crisis happened. They really tightened up. So we are at the bank partnering with Governor Armstrong on the home program, and RWISH are coming in with what we call the RINC program. It's the trying to keep up with the acronyms, but it's the rural, in-house, non-compliant, whatever you want to call it. But the intent is we will buy those mortgages originated in a rural area in North Dakota by a bank or a credit union that underwrites well in all respects except for the appraisal. And if they can't sell it, will be a capital market that they can sell it to. So housing in North Dakota is not a silver bullet type fix that's going to solve it. It's multi-pronged approach. And I think this is the start of a multi-pronged approach to see what works, what doesn't, adjust as we can go, and really make a difference in terms of rural workforce housing, because we're going to need the workers.
Mm-hmm. I'm excited to see the multi-prong approach. Western North Dakota has been fighting housing shortage for over a decade now, so we were so very excited and encouraged by these different platforms that are coming forward in these programs that we can plug and play with. So good stuff. Thank you for giving us that rundown.
And I think key there, because I think you and I have talked about this, I don't think any one of these programs will be perfect coming out, or these solutions will be perfect coming out. I think even more importantly is I think everybody that I've talked to is willing to adjust them as we go and as needed to dial them in better, which I think is probably even more important than the solutions themselves. So
yeah, beta test them, get 2.0 out the door with improvements, and we keep moving forward. So very exciting.
absolutely.
Very
Absolutely.
good. Well, real briefly, Don, what did we miss that you would like to talk about before we wrap this thing up?
I think just overall, I would like people to know the Bank of North Dakota has been here for North Dakota, and she's going to be here for North Dakota. I think one of the most surprising things to me so far has been I find myself really just explaining what really the bank is, and how it operates. And so I still think there's a need to educate people out there on, what does it mean to have a state sovereign bank, a state-owned bank? Because it's a very unique, a very powerful tool. And it was just everybody to know, I think it's in good hands. We're very mission-driven, very mission-oriented, and there's so much opportunity moving forward in the state, and we are going to be a part of that to bring that to life. So it's exciting.
Very cool. I know people can Google it super easy, but if they want to find your website, how do they do that?
Yeah, www.bnd.gov. Tons of information out there. If you just want information on the bank, or if you're looking for a specific program, go out there and it will get you to the right place.
Excellent. Well, we appreciate your time, Don. We appreciate your work, and we look forward to working with the Bank of North Dakota again in the future.
Sounds great. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you. So we're always kind of trying to be in tune with our listeners. And so if there's a listener out there right now and they're thinking, am I an entrepreneur? Should I talk to somebody about my idea? What questions do you think they should really ask themselves before they explore further a business idea?
I think one of the first things they need to understand is that, I think maybe Keith touched on this, but just because you're a good welder doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be a good business owner or a good, you name the profession right now. There is a lot that goes into it on the back end that you may not realize. You have to be good at books, and if you're not, you have to have a trusted person that is going to be good at books for you, and that's going to be a cost. You have to, the HR hat they have to wear, the safety hat you have to wear, and if you're not going to do that, there is a cost to that. Sometimes there's a thought process going in where the small businesses are going to try to avoid some of those costs because they don't see a return off of it, right? It's natural human instinct to be out there and want to submit an invoice for the work you did. And, sometimes you may not value some of the behind the scenes work that goes into running a business. Those are things that need to be thought out and have a very good plan in place before you just jump in to try to start your own business. It can all be done. And we're certainly happy to help out with recommendations and walking through that process. But it's something that needs to be thought out and planned for ahead of time.
Bobby, anything that you could really just express to somebody to really think about before moving forward with an idea?
Yeah, I think when I think about starting a business, the two things that jump out to me is the best business owners. Typically, you're going to hire quality professionals to help you, just like Justin said. If you're the best welder, you're probably not going to understand accounting and insurance and, legal contracts. So hiring quality professionals to help you through that process is key. And the next thing that I think of is when you think about the best businesses, they most likely have the best process to understand. Like when you start to have employees and you want things done a specific way, the best way to improve efficiencies is to have a good process that you, the employee, the next employee that you hire can easily follow. So those are the two things that I think about in terms of people that wanted to start a business. Think about those two things.
Keith, what?
Well, I think, there's more to it. It's making them, like Justin said, aware of all the things that go into it besides just doing the work. And we get a lot of people that come in and they might hang out with somebody outside of work and they think, oh, it'd be great if we went into business together. And that definitely, I try and talk them out of that because that never works well. Or at least it hasn't in my time doing this. Your foundation for wanting to do it has to be solid, and you have to understand it's not an 8 to 5 thing anymore. You're going to live it, breathe it, need it for a long time until you feel like, you're established and things are going the way they need to, so you can afford to take that deep breath. But there's nothing easy about it. I think just making people aware of how hard it really is. I think we were super fortunate in our part of the world. I think that the entrepreneurial fire burns really hot out here because there is so much opportunity. And it's just like for the lenders when they're looking at loans, it's risk mitigation. How can you do this without putting everything you own in jeopardy? A lot of people don't understand when you sign a personal guarantee, that means everything you have is at risk. And we get a lot of clients that don't understand what that means until you dig into it. Like you take this loan out, it doesn't work. This is what the ramifications are going to be. I think they start looking at things in a little bit different light.
Taking on the risk, and what's the saying? No, it's a bad saying. Never mind. Risk and responsibility, discovering, understanding, all of those. Out of curiosity, so looking back, having clients come through the door, my husband has spent time lending and so had the opportunity ranching is our business, but had the opportunity to learn best practices, learn what not to do, learn how to, assess and analyze things. But if you had somebody in your office and looking back, you could give them advice that maybe you saw coming or something that is sort of a trend or things you see often in business ownership, what could you share as maybe a piece of wisdom to people out there?
You are the boss. You're no longer necessarily the friend. That doesn't necessarily mean that you can't be friendly with your employees or even your customers, but you have to do what's best for the business now. It's not a recreational activity. There are sometimes hard decisions to be made that will, in the short term, maybe make the business owner feel like the bad person. But, in order for that business to survive, sometimes those decisions that might make your stomach turn over a little bit have to be made. And there's, no more Mr. Nice Guy, so to speak. So I think that is one of the things that people have to understand, that there are hard decisions that not necessarily are going to be the most popular at that specific time will need to be made.
Yeah, I'm ever since I've have little kids now in sports, I think I'm addicted to motivational speeches. And Kobe Bryant was a good one. He always said leadership is a lonely place. The best leaders aren't always going to be the most well-liked. And just to kind of talk about how, as a business owner, you're obviously the leader of your company and you have to make those hard decisions. But also, I kind of think that the only way to really learn is to make mistakes and learn from them. I could sit there and tell you for 3 hours what to do. It might not resonate, right? So don't be afraid to make mistakes, learn from them, and move on, type of thing. So,
words of wisdom, Keith?
I think those guys hit it pretty well. I think it's just, again, making them super aware of what all is going to happen and entail, and how life will probably change for a while as they make this big leap. And it's, there's not a lot of businesses you can start where you're going to only be the employee. I mean, anything that's going to grow, you're going to have to learn how to manage employees, and that's a challenge to learning all the HR rules and in good books. I'm sure every lender would tell you that there's not a lot of great bookkeeping they see on a consistent basis from day to day, and that's one place, like Justin hit it 100% on the head. They don't see the constant rate of return on it, but it's super, super important. When an opportunity comes, if you're not prepared and you don't have good financials, your ability to execute is gone. And I think that's sometimes what they forget, is what it can do for you when you're prepared.
I know something that I still hear periodically is it's all fun and game and it's all a hobby until you take out a loan. And then you have obligations, and it is a business, and to treat it as such. So I guess just something good to keep in mind. Okay, we're kind of getting down to the end, but one of the things I'm very curious about, two things I have left that I want to get your thoughts on or your opinions on. If there are kids out in listening to this, and I think kids are the best dreamers, right? They're still creative, like they haven't had doors shut in their face, and the sky's the limit. So if you have these young adults looking at, well, we have all the opportunities now. We have a great school system. We have the Buccaneers Skills Center. They're gaining skills. What would be some, if they have dreams of being a business owner one day, what would be some really important topics, classes to take, maybe short courses? What would be some good foundational knowledge to have if they are thinking they want to go down that path of ownership someday?
I think the number one thing is, especially with younger people, is if you want to work in a certain area, go find a good company to work for a while and learn everything you can. We get clients in that love to cook and they think they should have a restaurant, and that's like, all right, go work at one for a while. And if you still want to do it after 6 months or 9 months, then we can dig into it a little deeper. But it's the unknown. If they can work for a really good company and learn how things are done and learn some good procedures and some, like these guys have said, then their path to ownership is going to be so much easier, even if they start their own business.
I think if I had a 17, 18-year-old son or daughter, I think I'd tell them to go into a construction trade. It's probably the quickest way to become a millionaire in the next, by the time they're 25, I'd say. I look at the construction industry as a dying industry. They seem to have little to no help. And for the longest time, when I was growing up, my parents said, go to college, go to college so you can get a job type of thing. And it seems now that everyone's following in that footstep of going to college and getting a job, and no one's kind of going into the trades. And it seems to me that if a young kid that wanted to potentially get into business ownership, starting a trade or learning a trade and understanding the business aspect is a very, very successful way to look at things.
Yeah, I totally agree with Bobby there. And in addition to that, a basic understanding of accounting or business financials for when that person is ready to make the leap and start his or her own business within the trades goes a long ways. And I know that the trade schools have those classes. Sometimes they're not. I think that the students may not put much stock in them, but they're if you are looking to have your own business someday, just that basic understanding is definitely needed. As these guys have mentioned, there's going to be a lot of learning on the job when it comes to the financials, and there will be mistakes made. But at least if you have a basic understanding of what you're looking for, that'll go a long ways.
I think back Justin, I don't know. We're both NDSU graduates. Were you an ag econ major?
I was.
Did you have 242?
Yes.
One of, I think, in my opinion, the most valuable courses, but you basically got put on a team. That was your business team, and you spent the entire year running a business quarter by quarter, looking at different scenarios up in front of you, and I found a lot of value in that class. And business is transferable across many skills, many trades, many services, but foundational and important in financial literacy today, honestly. So I know we talked about housing, and we're probably getting close to closing this May celebration of Small Business Month out. But Bobby, you've talked about housing a few times. I think as a community, we have been working on housing solutions for well over a decade. And I think we're seeing some opportunity coming our way down the pipe with some of the legislation. How do we get rooftops? What are good, solid goals for getting rooftops in our community?
Well, I guess for me, looking at it at, the macro level, like McKenzie County has been obviously very, the housing has been on everyone's forefront of their mind. And they've done many programs to help subsidize the housing development. And they're all well and good, right? The programs that they've rolled out have been awesome. But I think the bigger picture to look at is maybe not how do we get 100 rooftops in 5 years. It's how do we sustain the construction industry here locally. And it kind of goes back to some of the comments that I've made about it's probably very difficult for economic development to bring in a large construction outfit. The best thing to look at is starting a construction company. Having 17, 18-year-old kids showing interest in starting a construction trade and maybe going into the Bakken Area Skills Center to instead of going to college, learn a trade. So I think to answer your question, how to get rooftops, I think the bigger question is how do you sustain the construction industry in McKenzie County to get those rooftops?
I think that part of it goes to the livability of McKenzie County and specifically Watford City. If you want to get right to the fact of the matter, we are competing against the local counties and local towns for those rooftops, for the workers that are going to live in those homes. And we need to make McKenzie County and Watford City the most attractive place for that type of investment to take place and for those families to want to live here. And I think that we have done an unbelievable job of that over the past 15, 20 years. You take a look around at what the hospital is doing right now within Watford City. McKenzie Health is adding more and more specialists all the time. They're delivering babies, which is, only a year or so old. One of the very, very few hospitals in the nation that has actually added the ability to have a birthing unit where most are removing them. I believe June is going to be a record month for the number of births in the hospital. In addition to that, the Bakken Area Skills Center, what the community has done with the addition of the schools, elementary, high school, the Rough Rider Center, the new fairgrounds, the Ag Expo, it can go on and on. I think that it is, such a great time in McKenzie County for people to want to move here and make this their life. We can look at the school enrollment and see that a lot of people have done just that. I mean, this is a very young community. It's shown in the stats. what is our average age of a resident in McKenzie County, like 30.1 year old or something like that?
It's like 15 to 16 years younger than we were 15 years ago. So yeah, very early 30s.
It almost, I'm kind of going back to the if you build it, they will come type mindset. Getting rooftops built is not, like we've talked about, it's not unique to McKenzie County. It's not unique to North Dakota. This is a nationwide issue. And the subsidies, the economic development that goes behind trying to spur some of that is great and needed. And we are very fortunate to be in a position where the county and the city can offer some programs that maybe some can't. But at the end of the day, people have to want to live here. And I think that we've done a super job over the past 20 years of making that happen. And, it's such an exciting time with everything that's going on and with what's planned. I just think the momentum is very strong and with really no end in sight.
That makes me want to go do things again. So thank you. That filled my glass. Thanks, Justin. But to credit you and maybe set a place marker to many listeners out there, you were the president of the city council at a time that was very difficult, very rapid growth period. And did you even serve as interim mayor for a period of time, or how did that all work out? I don't know.
Yeah, I was the mayor for about a year and a half after Brent Sanford left to go to be the lieutenant governor. There was a special election held, and I won that special election and filled out the rest of his term until, when the term expired, I did not rerun for mayor. It was an incredible time, and so I know that, there are many of us that live in town that it was not necessarily the livability was not all that great for a time period. During that time period, it seemed like it was never going to end. Now looking back, it kind of just seems like a blip on the radar screen, But standing in long lines at the grocery store, waiting 45 minutes to try to get into town just from the golf course, which is, right in the middle of town now. It was not the most livable community for a while. And so that, there's certain pride in what we have now that all of us that have lived through that certainly can have. And it was a huge team effort from everybody involved. And it's fun to see how we've kind of come out on the other side.
And I think maybe without getting too much into it, you see a lot of the static on social media and just kind of the discontent. And for the folks that worked through that growth period and all of the pain points that existed there, that kind of hits a little close to home, because where we came out on the backside is definitely a success story. And so thank you for the work that you did at that time, because you couldn't buy ice cream in Watford City because it would be melted before you could get checked out of the grocery store line. So we're very grateful for the work of the community leaders at that time. So I think we're going to wrap it up. Anything we've missed? If we have people out there listening and they have an idea, they're thinking about starting a business, they've had the opportunity to learn about SBDC's services. Keith is the GOAT in his arena. We have both two of our Main Street banks here that have strong, deep roots in the community. So thank you guys for being part of the team of many businesses in our community. And I would challenge people during the month of May to think about small businesses, keep them top of mind. And when you're making your purchasing decisions, really think about those independently owned and operated businesses who make their decisions locally, and always have the community in mind when they're making those decisions. So before we sign off, any last minute thoughts that you want to share with the listening audience out there?
Just if they have an interest, whether it's to talk to their lender or to you or to your office or Daniel's office, just give them our contact info and one of us will get back to them and do the best we can to get them to the point they can go back to the bank and ask for money if that's what they want to do.
And as always, thank you, Keith. Our North Dakota Tourism 2025 Amplifier of the Year, Mr. Brock White, will definitely drop contact information in the show notes, so people will be able to get to our Long X development team, contact SBDC's team, contact Cornerstone and First International's contact. And we hope we spur some entrepreneurial spirit out there in the month of May. So thank you all for joining us, and thank you for all the work that you do for our community. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Vanita.
Thank you.
Thank you.